And this is my associate, Paul Shafranca. And Paul lives now in Mississippi. I live in Illinois. And we're glad that you came here to our workshop. And we're going to explore some things, and we're going to see why some things work the way they do. And to begin with, I need to tell you about some killer whales down in Florida. When I first moved to Florida in summer of 1985, they had a big publicity campaign about the baby shamu. Okay, the baby shamu. And they had all, if you've ever been in Florida, the amusement parks and entertainment facilities, they really plastered the television with commercials. And they had these little kids on there go, "I love the baby shamu." And then they'd have kids singing, "Oh, we love the baby shamu." And I was like, oh, wow, you know, the baby shamu was the first killer whale ever born in captivity. And then for a while in the news, it was in the news big time. They had pictures of, like on the Channel 5 and Channel 6 news, you know, where the baby whale was catching on real quick. It was swimming with its mother. It was doing all the same tricks that its mother and father were doing, and it was catching on with incredibly amazing speed. Well, something happened, you know, and you didn't hear about the baby shamu anymore. Well, about 1980, well, it was like towards the end of 86, first part of 87, you hear again about the baby shamu. And you hear all of it over again about the baby shamu. Well, it don't take but a few months for a killer whale to get like really big. And this kind of perplexed me. I said, well, what happened to this baby shamu? And I, working with the company I was working with at the time before I started TeslaTech Systems, I was working for a company called ETI Electronics Incorporated. SeaWorld was one of our customers. We did their submersible pumps, we did motors, pumps for them, and usually one of my employees would go out there to pick up the devices and bring them in for repair and take them out. Well, I had another, some customer to see in Orlando, and I wanted to go to SeaWorld. And you know, get through the gate and go through all the thing, meet the maintenance man who we'd been doing his pumps and motors for from time to time. So I went out there and I asked him, I said, you know, sir, finally got to the maintenance and we talked about our pumps and motors, and if you want to come in, come on in. And I said, I wanted to ask him about the baby shamu. I said, what happened to the first baby shamu? He said, well, it caught on really good, and it started doing the tricks better than its mother and father. He said it was incredibly intelligent, and he said first thing we knew, it was taken out and isolated, and he said, to be honest with you, I don't really know what happened to it. Well, making a little bit further inquiry, guess what baby shamu's mother name was? Shamu. It's getting a little weird there. I was like, well, okay. Well, what was the baby shamu's father's name?
Shamu.
Shamu. Well, guess what? They had another baby, and what did they name it?
Shamu.
And since then, they've had several more, and guess what their names are?
Shamu.
Shamu. Okay. Well, if they're all the same, how do you know which one is which? They could switch them anytime they wanted to, but it's all the same. But they're different. But you don't know which one is which. That is where we start our workshop. They're all the same, so how do you know which one is which? Now, I'm sure that most everyone here has been to a Christian church or a Catholic church at one time, right? And occasionally we have to go to a courtroom occasionally, right? I mean, I've been there a few times. And we can see in our minds what your basic Christian church of today looks like. You have the auditorium here, don't we? And then you may have like a little stage area up here, and then you'll have like an altar here, or some people call it the Lord's table, and you'll have a pulpit here, and then you'll have a chair here and a chair here. And they're all pretty much the same, aren't they? There's not a lot of variation. You come in this way, and some churches even have a room back here to where you walk in, and then you see through the glass when the singing stops, or when they're changing something, you go in the door. And the same thing with the courtrooms. Most courtrooms will have, I mean, I'm not trying to be real specific with my drawing here, just to refresh. I mean, everybody can see this in their mind. We're just going to refresh here a little bit. Okay? You'll have the judge sitting right there, Okay. And then you'll have a table over here for the defendant, most cases. And then you'll have a table over here for the plaintiff or the state. And then you'll have little sections over here, right? And then you have another little section over here. And basically all courtrooms are set up exactly like that. There's not a lot of variation. And I imagine if somebody just dropped you in a courtroom or in a church, you wouldn't know which one you were in unless somebody actually came up and told you. Now, as we get into this, all these audio-visual aids here that I'm going to be using, you are more than welcome to look at. You're more than welcome to feel them, to touch them, and to experience them for yourself. And most of you know that I'm a book collector. At the height of my library, I had about 2,300 volumes. And I always wanted to collect the books that you could not buy. You know, just, I guess, nature of the beast. And the most obscure books, the most expensive books I could get, and the strangest books, and books that the common public just don't even know exist. And you come across all these tiny, beautiful little books. And some of them open up. Some of them have layout floor chart sheets in them. And this book here is like from 1873. Highly prized, cost me a fortune. And here's another little book. And well, you know, they're all little books. I guess if you were in the middle of the night and you were sitting there feeling around, well, you wouldn't know which one was which. You wouldn't know. And some of them are thin. This one's a little water-worn, but I wouldn't take a fortune for it. I mean, it's a very, very important book. And it's just, you know, they don't always have writing on the front of them. And you can, at the end of all this, see, here's one here that's just beat up to crap, but it's very interesting. And here we have them. These are some of these are just barely holding together. Some are very old. Now here's a real tiny one here, real small one. See, there's a real small one there. And, well, what is it made for? What are these tiny books made for? Maybe something you could put in your hip pocket. Maybe something inside your cloak, your tunic. Maybe just something that you wanted to hide easy if somebody were coming, or you wanted to get rid of it real quick. See, they have nice, little thing, and some of them that read it. We're going to go into what these books say. Now, this right here is a very, very special one here, because this one right here, I've got several books copied in there, but we're going to hold that for last. We're going to save the best for last. Here's another one here. Here's another one that doesn't have a name on it. Doesn't have a name on it, but boy, look how fancy that is. And this is, I think, from the 40s. All the dates are in here. And each one of them, you can come up and look at these after the show. And any questions that you have, but I'm going to work with these right here specifically for right now. I'm going to set this down here. And a funny thing, you got all these books, but really they're all the same thing. They're really all the same. Well, how do we get to that ideal that they're all the same? Well, let's look at some slats here. And what I'm going to show you, I'm not trying to offend anyone. Okay, we're going to be talking about modern day societal cults. And I'm not here to offend anyone. And if something that I have said, because at the end, I'm going to give you the dangers involved with what is happening here. And nobody needs to come up later on and say, hey, you know, that happened to me. And I got railroaded because of such and such. I know, I understand, I don't need to hear it. And you know, it's the bad in everything really boils down to the person involved. There's good in some things and there's bad in some things, and really it boils down to the individual person and what they do with it. And now, I want to show you a couple of layouts that I have copied. The layouts that I've got here are all copied from these books, and I've blown them up a little bit so that you can see better. And at the end of the program, I have up here the entire program so that you can take this home with you and always have a reference of what happened here. And these will be $5 a piece if you want one. And it's going to be, are you going to catch the lights for me, Trent? Okay. Well, remember what we had on, let me draw our church one more time. Let me just draw our church. All right. I'm going to draw a little bit better this time. Okay. Here we have the pulpit. That's generally where the preacher is. They have the Lord's table or the altar right here. And then you have the chair here. And the other chair here. And what usually sits in these chairs in the back? We know we have the preacher on the pulpit, but what, it's usually what? An elder or a deacon. Is that not correct? Or sometimes it's two elders, or it'll be the deacon in the highest rank, which even in churches they'll call him the senior deacon or the senior elder. Okay, Trent, could you please catch those lights for us? Well, lo and behold, all these books here are the modern cults of the Shrine, the Freemasons, Knights of the Royal Arch, the Eastern Star, and the Benevolent Protective Order of the Elks. And I have others that aren't quite as significant as these. I'm going to try to focus that in a little bit better. How do I do that? Oh, yeah, well, that's coming through in. And the italics at the very top of these are exactly what cult they are involved with. Now, generally speaking, when you enter these cults, they highly treasure and revere their secret information, the stuff that I'm fixing to show you now. And part of what they have, it's not that there's a problem with this going on, but I want to point out some specific things. Right here we have the the conductor's seat. See here? Right here, down at the bottom, on the inside of this door, this portal here, we have the warder. Here we have the sentinel. Now you'll notice that this is facing to the east. All of these buildings face the same direction. This is the east, this is the west, north, and south. This is the conductress. Sentinel, warder, conductress, marshal, chaplain, the worthy matron, and worthy patron. And here we have a secretary and a treasurer. Over here we have the associate conductress, and here we have the associate matron. Now, these are generally, and we're going to go into it a little bit deeper, when you come in the door here, all of these are oriented in a counterclockwise situation, okay? None of them really go the other way, but you come in through the door. Now, when these meetings begin, and they shut the door off, if you have your sentinel and your warder, that door is shut. And before you go in, the sentinel will mark, he'll go. Now, what does the warder do? Anybody know?
Same thing.
That means he's fixing to open up the door. And that means that the initiate or whoever is visiting is going to be coming in, and that he has been approved by the task force out front here, that he is allowed to be in this lodge and to know the things that I'm going to show you here with all of these various cults that exist today and why they exist this way. Now, this is the Eastern Star. You'll notice that they have the altar right here in the center, and they have the Holy Bible right there open up. Here they have Ada, Ruth, Esther, Martha, and Electra. That's a little bit. Electra. All of these groups that I'm going to show you here, they all have the very same American flag ceremony. And a lot of them, since they never adopted indivisible, one nation under God, most of these books here, since they're old, they don't have under God in them, which isn't a big issue. I mean, they're printed, some of them in the 1800s up to the 30s and the 40s. I don't have any of them here that are new. I leave the new stuff in the pouch, in the bag there, the box, and just take the meat stuff. All of them say the Pledge of Allegiance to the United States flag, that this is good citizenry. We want to put into your mind that this is all good citizenry. And all of them have a flag bearer or a color bearer. On this particular one here, I don't see the flag bearer, but he's got to be in one of these points. They'll have a flag bearer, and for all of you people who have really studied up, I know the Bear Boys, they all have the Admiralty flag involved in their lodge rooms. Okay, they don't use the American flag. They all have the long gold tassels on their flag. All of them feature and base their premises on the Holy Bible. And they get mostly into the Old Testament. All feature an opening prayer to God, and some end with the Lord's Prayer from the King James Bible, all said in unison. And all of these companies have have the same layout, what we're going to show here now. This is the Order of the Eastern Star, stations of the officers. Okay. Now, the Eastern Star is a parallel group to the Freemasons. I'm saving the Freemasons for a little bit later on. The Eastern Star is basically set up for wives, sons, and daughters of Freemasons. As a matter, or actually fellow craft members, third-degree Masons, or what they call 32nd-degree Masons. You have to go up. Then your wife becomes. Everyone can in the family of a Freemason can become an Eastern Star, with the exception of one person. Who would that? Who might that be? Who?
Mother.
The mother of a Freemason cannot become a member of an Eastern Star. She cannot become a matron. She cannot even enter into the lodge. Now, I wonder why that would be. Because Mom would get out there and say, "What in the world are you doing? Who do you think you are? You get your butt back home with your family and you do this and you do that." Well, we're going to see here a little bit closer what now this is just the layout. And you can read, when they go into a ceremony, everybody has a role that they play. The worthy matron and the worthy patron, everybody has a little step, not a step dance, but it's an organic ritual that they perform every time that they open up the lodge and that they close it. Okay? Now, here, we're going to look at the Order of the Elk. Well, if I was an Eastern Star and I walked into this Order of the Elk, or if I wanted to be an elk, I'd say, you know what? That looks pretty close. Here, we have the Tyler and the door, okay? You got to come through here. Then you have to go through, there's another, this is for changing clothes and lockers. And you have the inner guard here. Okay, you have your Tyler, inner guard. And then you have your flag stand. And this right here means esteemed leading knight. Now, what was the other one? It said associate matron. Now, it doesn't mention it on this one, but trust me, that is the east, south, north, and west. And then you have the esteemed loyal knight here, and there's a flag stand there. Well, you wonder why there's two. Well, in their ritual, they take the flag back and forth, okay, while they're doing their thing. Now, here we have the chaplain. Remember, on the other side, on the other one, the chaplain was on this side. Here we have the esquire. This is the treasurer, secretary. Well, that's identical, isn't it? And here we have the esteemed ruler. No, excuse me, exalted ruler. Exalted ruler. And now here we have the esteemed lecturing knight. And this right here is, of course, the esteemed loyal knight. And this is the esquire's position during balloting. And right here, what do we have? We have the altar. Huh, okay. So you just check that out for a minute. And here, now let's look at this again. Our church, just to get an idea. Well, it's kind of similar, a little bit of variation, but it's all very orderly. And so, yes, ma'am.
I was born and raised in the Mormon church.
Yes, ma'am.
Until I was age 50 before I woke up and I left it. But that is what goes on in the Mormon temple.
Oh, really? Same thing?
Yes. And Joseph Smith stole the temple endowment from the Masons. That's why they killed him.
Well, I'll be.
And that is the same as in the Mormon temple.
Well, that's very
much,
interesting.
almost.
See, I didn't know that.
Yeah, Mormon.
Thank you for sharing that with us. Okay, well now this is the Order of the Elk. Now the elk does a lot of good. They do a lot of good for children. They pass out animals. They pass out. They feed the elderly at Christmas and Thanksgiving. There's a lot of benevolency that occurs with the Benevolent Protective Order of the Elk, and there are many, many fine, fine people in the Order of the Elk. Okay. Now let's look at another one here. How many of you have ever heard of the Odd Fellows?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's an older group. They're getting smaller and smaller, but look at the Odd Fellows. Well, you got your door here, you got the anteroom, and then you have your inner guard. And let's see. The guy that's sitting there is the Noble Grand. Okay? Then right to his right is the right side Noble Grand. Then you have the left side Noble Grand. All right? Then you have the recording secretary, and then you have the treasurer, and then you have the final secretary. Your chaplain sits over here, and over here you have your past Noble Grand. All right? And then, right here, sitting in the west, is your vice grand. Now here you have the left side vice grand, and your right side vice grand. And now see here, you can see the locker? Well, that's the locker, the same locker that's in all the rest of them. They keep their robes, their ceremonial robes, and the Tyler there will have on a big long sword. And it's from age old because they have the sword there because if somebody comes through the door without doing he's supposed to take the sword out and cut their heads off. Okay, that's, you know, just all folklore, but that's what happens.
Mormons do the same.
Yeah, okay. The Mormons the same. Well, Joseph Smith was a
He was a
32nd
Mason.
degree
The
Mason.
Masons, the Masons actually sent him out to organize them.
Yeah, and he married Captain John Morgan's ex-wife after they axed him.
Oh, after he killed him.
Okay, well now we're getting a little bit deeper. This is your diagram of the shrine. Okay, and here you have the worthy high priest and the worthy secretary or whatever. You'll get it all down on your thing here. Honorable matron or honorable master, and you know they're all of these. Or here's the escort, B escort. All of these are coded. The queen's attendants, the king's guards. This is the diagram of the shrine of a big, a larger ceremony that they have. You notice here in this, you got to have a lot of people to do this. I mean, with the Freemasons, Oddfellows, doesn't take near as many people to do this. Now, all of these have specific names, okay? And some of them are the same: escorts, the squires, chaplain of this, chaplain. Here you have the king, you have the queen, you have the worthy secretary, the organizer. And here, though, let's see. Look at this. Here you have the altar, and that right there, kind of to me, looks like a tennis court, don't it? You see that here? Well, I guess you pass the ball back and forth, and here'd be the net. You know, and you know, I guess if you got it too close or whatever. But you notice right there in the center, they have the altar, and here they have the prep room and the ante room, or the before room. Okay. Well, now we're going to look at and the rest of them here that I'm going to show you in a bit are the free and accepted Masons, also known as the ancient and accepted Freemasons. It's the same. Well, what do we have here? We got the guy in the east there. Here's the west, south, and north isn't mentioned. And you got different positions here. And here, this is just a floor chart from this book right here, this beautiful book right here. And you can see that you kind of come in here, and then you go around in a circle here, and then you do that. Well, you see these dots right here. You see these 3 dots, and then you'll see 3 dots here and a dot there. And then he comes up here to the worshipful master. See, and then you have the senior warden sitting here. Then you have the junior deacon, junior warden, and you have all the same positions. But unfortunately, I didn't have my book. It's still in Chattanooga. That actually has all the positions. Right here is the altar. Okay. Well, these little dots here are very important. At these positions here, a lot of times the candidate for initiation or whatever, he's blindfolded. And he's being led by the koto, what they call the koto. They put a rope around him, they put a blindfold around him, and then he's just led through. And as soon as he passes those points, I don't have anything that makes a loud noise. They hit that gavel. They all have a gavel at their places, and they pop it. And if you're like half naked, they strip them out of their clothes, and they put them in these special ritual garments. They pull them wrong, and they slap those hammers, pow, 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 and it freaks them out. And they're like, "Ooh, what was that? What was that?" Because you're blindfolded, you don't see it. Now, ordinarily, if you see somebody pop a hammer, it's not going to scare you at all. I mean, it's just something that happens. And you know, you say, "Oh, okay, the guy's got a hammer. He pops it down. It's going to be fine." Okay. Well, here's another one that's a little more complicated. Now, right here, guys, I would not want to have any beer before I went in there if I had to do this ritual. I'd be being, wait a second, what was I supposed to be? I'm supposed to go this way? Am I supposed to go backwards? All of this is entrenched, and with these little books that are used to help memorize these rituals, well, you know, where are you supposed to go? I was looking at it, I studied that, and I don't know who goes where. Right? Oh, here's another one. And we're going to set this one here aside here in a minute. Here's one. Well, here's like the ring around the rose. You got to walk around 3 times before you go up to the middle here. But you see, right here, he comes in and he goes out. And this is very specific. See, here's your hammers here. See, on the first lap, on the first lap, they hit it 3 times. And on the second lap, they hit it twice. And on the third lap, they hit it once. See, at these different stations, they pop that hammer. And then he comes up, and then he goes right into the worshipful master, who pops the hammer 3 more times. He's got to have on his big top hat too, those old British top hats. And then he comes back here, and I guess he gets another hammer or he picks one up or something. That's a symbol that I can't really make out. Then he goes right up to the altar. Okay? Well, let's set that one aside for just a minute. Now, there's some of them that are simple. I'm going to go ahead and show you these and go through them and let you see each and every one of them. Because all of these are in your book, and you can just see how complicated some of these and how simplistic some of them are. I guess it depends on the person as to what they actually do. Now, here's one that I don't fully understand, nor do I really care to, but it's only one lap. It's only one lap around the joint, so I don't know what these steps here are. I don't know if you're supposed to skip, or it looks like some kind of hopscotch or something, you know. It's like, what are you supposed to do here before you go around the altar and get the bangs 3 times before you go up to there? All right. Here's another one. See, it's a ring around the rosy all over again. It's a little bit different. It's a little bit different. Well, you see, you got the 3. You don't have all of the same bangs on the hammer, and when you get your thing and you study these numbers, you'll be able to see what the positions are. They call these the positions. And each time you stop at a position, certain things are supposed to happen to you. They either take your garment, change it, or put the blindfold on backwards, or whatever. Here's another one. I'm just going to show that one briefly, okay? But you get the idea. I just got a hammer at home here and let you see them. Oh, now here's one that's real complicated. Jeez. I tell you what, I'd be ready to hit the bar after we did that one. It's got 11 positions in it? Well, how is this guy? And this right here, what is that? Is that like the road that's fixing to be made? Or is that one that they haven't finished yet? On my maps, that's the highway that's dirt, you know? But you come in here, you go to the altar, and they say something to you. You go here, then here. It's like follow the dots. Maybe these guys did follow the dots here. Then you come around here to number 5. You're supposed to stand there. And in each one of these places, according to the books here, you stand, and someone will talk to you, and you will memorize your part and your line and your story, and you answer them back. It's constantly hands back and forth, and that's what they do. Okay? Well, all of these have a real fancy logo. Okay? Real fancy logo. This is the White Shrine of Jerusalem, and translated from Latin as "My faith lies in this sign." Okay? And that's what the in hoc signo spes mea. That's what that means. Or I put my faith in this sign. My faith lies. This is the sign. I will always have faith in whatever. And now you know here, the Bolshevik star right in the center. See that? And they've got it registered. I guess they got the U.S. trademark company to actually trademark it for them. All right? My faith lies in this sign. And it's a cross and a staff and a Bolshevik star. Odd combination, wasn't it? You know, a little strange.
Bolshevik Revolution.
Now here's Knights of the Royal Arch. This is their little insignia. Holiness to the Lord. Now, one thing about the Knights of the Royal Arch, they are a little bit more Christian-like than some of the other groups. They do have Jesus written in their ritual, and that's one of the things that they do. Okay? Boy, I wish I had that gavel. Pop, pop, pop. Ancient and accepted Freemasons. Okay? This is the arms of the United Grand Lodge of England. That's taken from this book here, and it's a 1970 book, actually. And it's got all kinds of seals and signs. You can examine it if you like. And it's got the coat of arms here. Not being careful enough. And here you'll notice, what do we have here? Some block Hebrew script, see? All right? Got some block Hebrew. Well, I have never met a Freemason that knew anything about Hebrew, but I wonder why that would be there. See, ancient and accepted Freemasons. And I don't know what does that say in Latin there, Paul? Beata vidi tasse, what is that?
Listen, look, observe.
Listen, look, observe. It helps with Latin when your best friend is fluent in Latin. It makes the job so much easier. I tell you. Thank you. All right. Well, there's some of the logos. Now, we're going to look at some seals of these people. Okay? Well, this is the seal of the Benevolent Protective Order of the Elk. See? Just look at it for a second. It's got a seal. It's got the elk in there. And in one of their books, when you're given the high sign, the hay sign, you're supposed to raise your hands up where you actually look like an elk. You know, you do that, and I'm sure it's not practiced today, but in the real old books, it's got the hand motions in there. Odd fellows, you're supposed to do this. One of the signs is up like this.
Mormon
And-
church was just like this.
Yeah, the more it's like a field goal, you know. And the Freemasons have signs like this. Okay, but this is the seal here. Do you need him, Mike, for something?
Yeah.
Well, you can't take my camera, man.
No, no. Can you just hold it for the camera?
Right here,
Not really.
you'll notice up there, the Sovereign Office of the Sovereign Grand Master Independent Order of the Odd Fellows, or we call it the IOOF. Okay. Now I'm a strange person, but I'm not an odd fellow. All right. Now let's look at their little insignia here. Okay. It says, we command you to visit the sick, relieve the distressed, bury the dead, and educate the orphan. Okay, that sounds good. Now, did you notice that all the other stuff was pretty much the same too between this one and the Protective Order of the Elks? You see that? You see how this layout is? Can you see the similarities? Okay. Well, here's another one. Now you see here, most worthy grand matron, most worthy grand patron, and this is the Eastern Star, and you'll see here, Order of the Eastern Star, General Grand Chapter. Okay, now everybody's getting a good idea now that all of these are the same. So how do you know which one is which, right? Okay. Now, I'm going to point out some of these, okay? And the meeting dens employ the same type of lodge numbering systems, like Grand Lodge, like this is Freemason Lodge number 37, or number 662, or various numbers in different places. They have different numbers, and that's the serial, because on all their records and data, they'll give you that. Okay, the Freemasons meet in the Blue Lodge. The Order of the Eastern Star, they meet in the Chapter Lodge. The Elk meets in the Elk Lodge. The Independent Order of the Oddfellows meet in the Rebecca Lodge. They're all organized by a grand concilium of some sort that gives the permission and the rights to make sure that they're doing their ritual service the right way, so that they know what's going on. Now, the leader and the director of the Freemasons is called Worshipful Master. The Order of Eastern Star is called the Grand Matron and the Grand Patron. And the Elk is called the Exalted Ruler. And the Independent Order of Oddfellows, the Noble Grand. And then you have the Past Masters, Past Masons, Past Grand Exalted. Now, the person on the inside of the door and the person in the west, positions of function. The Senior Warden, the Marshal, the Esquire, the Warden. Now, there's one group that I can't leave out. I can't leave out because of the significance of who they are, what they are, and how they have helped shape our nation's history. And after I had done this presentation that I'm giving you now to a group of guys back in the early 90s, I got this information here, what's in this book. And each and every one of you will be able to look at this to the fullest of your extent, and I'm going to explain a little bit of it. Well, who have I left out? Here's got all these cults, all these groups. What would be the most unusual group?
Ku Klux Klan.
This is the Imperial Seal of the Knights of the Ku Klux Klan. Where you think, holy cow, I just wonder if in their secret book, the Koran, well, let me look at this. Well, we see their deal there, and all the information is in here. Well, what would you imagine that their ritual lodge would look like? They call their lodge the Clavern. And I'm sure that none of you guys would ever see this unless I had it here. Probably would never care. But now that you've seen how all the rest of them, you know, I could probably lay some of the others on top of it, and you could be hard to be distinguished which one is which. Well, here, now the Klan is cool. They got their clavern, called the Ku Klux Klan. All of their names all begin with a K. Here you got the Klexeter. Here you have the Clalargo, the Clarago, the Caliph, which is like, I guess, a spin on bailiff. The Caliph stands here. The Nighthawk is the only one that's not in there. Here you have the Clad, and then you have here's the Clad's position here. Then you have the Clud. You have the Cligrat, the Clabby. The Clabby is their like chaplain. And then you have there's Nightlocks. Then here's the South Clad. Then you have the Clocon, which is the plural for clonkins or something. And here you have the Clocard. And you'll notice here, what do you have? You have coming in here. See, you got your lockers right here. Here's your table. Lockers, lockers, outer den, inner den. Here's a door. And then you have the Klexeter here. You got two Klexeters here. They're worried about you coming in through two ways, see? See, your candidates are in this room here. And your experienced Klansmen, or I guess higher-ups, for lack of in a higher degree, can come in here. And they wander around in circles. And then they go to the middle here. And then they go right around their altar. You see that? Sacred altar. Sacred altar. Well, the Ku Klux Klan has the very same pledge and the very same prayers as the Masons and the Eastern Star and everybody else. Let's look at this guy again here. Can you see the similarities? Well, how many Masons are there out there that hate the Klan? How many Klan members are there that just absolutely hate the Masons or the Eastern Star or anybody else? And they, because they only see one side of the spectrum, they have no idea that they're all exactly the same. But you guys here can, because I've proven it to you. I've got the information here, and you can see it firsthand for yourself that they are all the very same deal. Okay? Trent, can you catch the lights, please? Now, when they go into these lodge groups, and they have their order of businesses and who everybody is supposed to say what, and how they conduct their rituals, and everything that's exchanged back and forth between the exalted Cyclops, who is the worshipful master of the Ku Klux Klan, is going to be the exalted Cyclops. And they all have interaction and dialogue with each other back and forth. And, thank you. And when they call their order to business, all of them use the gavel. Bam, 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 bam. And in the booklet here, I'm just going to give you the Order of Eastern Star. They have the order of business listed in each manual, and they're just numbered from 1 to, it goes up to 18 in the Elks and the Ku Klux Klan. So that's real, they have more steps. The Freemasons, they only have 13, and then you have a few that go for more. But give you some idea, the Order of Eastern Star, I'm going to call it the OES, they have the opening ceremonies, the elk opening, the Independent Order of Oddfellows, they have roll call of officers. The White Shrine of Jerusalem, they have reading and approving of minutes. The KKK has the opening ceremony. The Knights of the Royal Arch, they have the roll call. Well, you got 2 roll calls, 2 reading of the minutes, and 1, 2, 3 3 opening ceremonies. Number 2 goes unfinished business, according grand honors, calling roll officers, introduction of visiting brothers and sisters, communications, reading of approved businesses, reading of minutes of previous convocations. And so, when you see this, you see that there might be a little bit of a variation in them. But how in the world would these guys know that the others were doing the same thing? But what does all this lead to?
One head.
Say it?
One head.
One head. So could we assume safely that someone is doing all of this the same way? That's the same person or the same people have actually concocted these rituals in the same manner from one group to the next without the other groups even having any idea? Well, what's wrong with it? What's wrong with it? Well, you get into the brotherhood of each other, and you start to learn this, and I've had Masons tell me, you know, there's just nothing like being in the Blue Lodge. You know, you got your brother there, and it's just the most exhilarating feeling, knowing that that guy is your brother, and that you can trust him to do this and that. Well, maybe some of this fills the gap that Christianity doesn't fulfill. Maybe that some of these people were stabbed in the back at their churches, or they, for first one reason or another, they got mad or whatever. They claim to be spiritual. Well, they have the Bible there. They meet once a month, generally speaking, or some will meet like every second Tuesday, every third Thursday. You know, and they have, different lodges have different patterns for their meeting. Many of these books, which you can come up and see, are all of the text in them. It looks like Latin or Greek or something because it's all in code. They don't want you to know what this says. I want to open up a few of them and set them up over here so that you can see the ones and just pick the flat back and just look at them. They're very fragile. Where's another big-time code book here? And you can see how these books are made. They got little symbols for the sun, little smiley faces. Well, the Klan, it's all just right there in big print. And the Klan has a lot of it in all capitals, so make sure that you see it. And like here's one of the qualifying interrogatories. Do you believe in the tenets of the Christian faith? See, the Klan was completely preponderated as a Christian faith, as an American patriotic thing. Everything having to do with the Klan was supposed to be godly, spiritual, Christian, for country. Look what it actually was.
Yeah.
Could we say that was probably a little bit of mind-bending, some doctrination? Possibly?
The Mormons had their same thing. Bandits
Okay.
that killed people.
Well, now where I'm going to is, well, where's all this linked to? What is the wrong in all this? Is there any wrong in it? And right here I have two jewels. These are printed in the early 20s. You'll notice that they are very black. These are Mackay, Volume 1, Volume 2. The revised edition, this is the Encyclopedia of Freemasonry. Okay? Masons would kill to have these. I hope none of you guys are Masons with guns or knives or something. And they are wonderful books, and they're great information for putting stuff like this together. And they're fascinating, and you are more than welcome to look at them when we take a break here in a second. But the gist of it is, well, what can happen? You know, if this is, well, you know, we've got the Benevolent Protective Order of the Elks, and then you have your lesser groups like Rotary, Optimist, JC,
Moose.
the Moose. Well, the Moose is I had their book, and they had the little ritual too. JC's Rotary, Optimist Club, the Lions Club,
Lions.
and this is what it will cause. You know, there's a lot of good that these groups do. But what they'll do is this: once you're in, once you've gone through some initiation, and guys and girls both, you know, this is what they'll try to pull on you. And I've heard it too many times to think that it was from different people miles apart to think that it was not so. And that is this: you're out with your buddies, and you guys are drinking at a place. Hey, let's go over to Jesse's house. He's having some girls over tonight. He's having some girls over. Oh yeah, let's go. Man, I need to get home to my wife. Oh, you wuss. What are you, whipped or something? You know, let's go. You know, you got plenty of time. We'll have you home by 11:30. Okay. So they go over to Jesse's house or whatever. And they'll have dancing girls. They'll have some paid prostitutes there. And they will talk you or sway you, get you enough drinks to go in. And they will set you up with this girl. Go for it. Your wife will never know. But what he don't know is they got recorders and cameras in that room.
What?
And they will videotape him with these prostitutes. And then a couple of weeks, and then they'll get him home on time. And then, a couple of weeks later, he doesn't want to do something. Oh, I can't come and cook the pit barbecue this weekend, or for whatever purpose. Hey, you need to come over to my house. I got something to show you. And here the guy is. He's married, been married for 10, 12 years. Happily married man. Got a wife and 2 kids. Wife loves him. He loves his wife. But he slipped. He slipped because he thought that his friends were looking out for his fun and pleasure, because they were looking out for their own pleasure. And now they got him. And now they'll have him forever. And this is part of the problem with some of these guys that you see there's nothing really physically wrong with them, but they never have the drive and the will to do anything. And they love their wife, they don't want this information getting out, but what are they going to do? And ladies, you go out, friends with the Eastern Star or the Elks, because there's some of them that have the women in there too. Well, what are they going to do? Take you out to a bar where they got the male strippers and this and that. Well, some of the prostitutes that's the only thing they do. It might be another guy's wife that is the prostitute to set up for the other fella. Okay? And women, they'll have these belly dancer men or the stripper guys that constantly do this from town to town to town that simply go to the lodges and that's all they do. Well, they'll set the woman up and then she's there. They got her, and the extortion and the blackmail begins, and nobody ever says nothing, but it eats away at them.
They do it with the congressman.
Yeah, do it with congressmen. They do it with senators,
President.
lawyers. That's how come they all march. And they say, well, people say, well, how could my guy? He's a Republican. How could he do that? How could he vote that way? How could that Democrat do that? They're all marching in the same step because they've all been in that same room with that same hooker, and they are sitting there, and they get a step out of line. They bust his family up. They bust his life up. He's supposed to go to a divorce court, and he's got all of his lawyers that are Freemasons or whatever that are against him. The judge is a Mason, and he can use every high sign, everything he can do, and he's just sunk. And by the time he has nothing. He has no wife. He has no future. He has no money. He has nothing. He don't even have a place to live or anything to drive if they want to. And that's what happens. Are there any questions?
Well, unless your name's James Trafficant, and then they put you in prison. Right?
Well, look at the two good Democrats, James Trafficant and Gary Condon. They both were voted to impeach Clinton. They were both conservative Democrats. And James Trafficant, they've been trying to get him since, 92 or 93, when he said, we have the best Congress money can buy. And he said all kinds of stuff on the floor of the Senate. And they said, we'll get you. It took them, 10 years, but buddy, they got him.
Well, Orrin Hatch has been in forever from Utah.
And
Orrin
he
Hatch
marches
is right at the top of this thing, and when he first ran, we actually helped on his campaign. He was a good guy.
Well, he ain't now.
Yeah.
He's just marching to the same
That's right.
step. And I'll guarantee you now, you can't even see him or have nothing to do with him or
No, no.
anything.
Well, you know, Newt Gingrich too, something like that happened to him. He was compromised lately and he backed off and resigned.
Yes, he did. Newt Gingrich left his wife on her deathbed for a 19-year-old.
And there are some.
Maybe somebody he made a party. Yes, sir.
You seen the Bohemian Grove tape?
Yeah.
The Bohemian,
Grove.
Bohemian Grove.
no, Bohemian Grove, that's new to me.
You don't know what that is?
Alex Jones, investigative reporter.
No, doesn't ring a bell.
You gotta see
You
that.
need to see it.
How do you see
Okay.
It's a resort for high-level politicians where all of this goes on. It's out in Northern California.
They set them up and,
Bush,
all the
everybody,
cult
all of
stuff.
them. They set them up, they videotape them.
well, see, if they got
Any
these
kind of
tapes, they could give them to the Los Angeles Mirror, Los
Yeah.
Angeles Times, the Denver Post.
Yeah.
They could do anything. They could threaten you, and the guy sits there, he has to march in step. Otherwise, he loses everything, his political life, everything.
Now there are some guys that have refused to do this with the prostitutes, whatever.
They get put out.
they get killed even.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They get, oh, really? That's what I was going to ask. I
They
mean,
get killed.
Yeah, if you don't march in step, you just won't get reelected. You won't get your financial package.
you're just not in it.
You just get out.
They
They
usually kill you.
they have to see in the military to move up in the officers. You have to be a Freemason. They have to have stuff on you to move up in the military. Generals, your officers, they have to have some extortion that they can use against you. Otherwise, you just stay as a non-commissioned officer or whatever. And it's a sad thing. And unless they get something on you, that's why, with some of this stuff, they do some good. The Shriners, they help kids and stuff, and it's a great, the guys, they go hunting together and they go drinking together. But watch out, because they won't think twice about setting your ass up and really just lowering the boom on you. And they'll do it in a heartbeat and just say, hey man, that's the way it goes. You might think that person was your very best friend until he says, hey man, I got a video you need to check out. All of us have got the same video. And it'll be some unimaginable, well, we're going to imagine, with this hooker that's, like 19 or 20, or even a minor. Or even a minor, a 15, 16-year-old minor.
Yeah.
What would happen, you know, so,
Go to jail.
yeah, and you're just like, yes, sir.
It goes beyond that though, too. They'll have, guys involved in homosexual acts and so on and so forth with young boys.
Mhm.
So it goes pretty deep, it looks pretty ugly.
And once it happens, they got you for good.
Well, Harry, I heard that, you know, the mind control groups use the same technique. They take a judge, for instance, in that county where they're active, and invite him to a party, and they find out what his perversion is, and then during the party they say, well, go up on the second floor, there's a little surprise for you. Maybe there's a little boy up there, whatever it is, it's his kinky fantasy. And then they videotape him, and then he's totally compromised, so they can never convict anybody in that county.
That's right.
So some counties are totally.
That judge will have to march in step no matter what.
Right,
Rest of his
right.
life.
No matter what. Yes, ma'am.
Something else these cults have in common too that I've noticed is that they all are male and exclude even the wives.
Right,
And
exactly.
they keep all this is secret from their wives.
Well, some of them don't.
Now the Eastern Star,
The Eastern
they
Star-
let them in, but there's always a man there sitting there in charge, one of the Masons. They can never be women alone without the men, like the men are alone without the wives, you know, and it's kept from the wives.
Well, that's all for a purpose. And to some degree, the Independent Order of the Odd Fellows, I believe they.
No, my grandfather was an odd fellow, and my grandmother could never get in, and she told
She
me
couldn't get
the
in.
same thing.
What, I don't know about the Elks. I know that women go to the Elks lodges, but I do know that the Elks also bring in dancers all the time into the lodge. They bring in dancers, and they'll try. Hey, are you going to the you going to the sock hop or whatever? And it's they're at the lodge right there. They got rooms upstairs, I'm sure. And don't you know they got recorders in there to catch anything that they might even go in there without any preconceived thoughts or ideas of what they may get. Just play the cards and see what happens.
Yeah.
There's no telling what you're going to get.
So could one assume that they have the goods on Catherine Harris?
Everybody, all the politicians.
Possibly. I don't see why not. Well, but once somebody gets into, let's say the JC's, Optimus, Rotary, or whatever, and they like it, and they move a step up into your Moose or your Elk, and then they kind of see, then they get into the Freemasonry, and they say, oh, okay, it can be something that is time-consuming. They want to consume all of your free time, all of your Saturdays. It gradually tears you away from your family. It destroys any and all creativity that you have. Because the next thing, you got to get up early in the morning to go to the next meeting or barbecue or this or that, and they'll run you ragged.
Yep, the Mormon Church does that.
And you have no life of your own. And when that happens, you just dwindle up. And I don't care how many how much colloidal silver, colloidal minerals, it just drains. When your mind, like the one guy said today, we know that we all heal ourselves. When you don't have it up here anymore to heal yourself, you die a short, quick death. And then your buddies here, they'll do a little. All these have the burial rituals. They'll do the little march around your coffin, and they'll spin the ring, and they'll tell you that, hey, we'll see you in that big lodge in the sky, buddy. And they'll, that the whole time it's all done under
Do you
friendship.
know what the ritual of the 33rd degree is? Are you familiar with that?
I'm sure it's exactly like these.
Well, what I...
But it happens in Washington, D.C.
Let me
There's
tell
only
you
that one
what
lodge there.
What I was told, the 33rd degree is honorary. Those from the
Right.
32nd degree that are promising are invited into...
You have to be a big-time politician or judge to be in there.
So then, part of that ritual is you're told to spit on the cross.
Yes.
So if you refuse, you are put into one group, and you're made to think that's what was expected. If you do spit on the cross, this is what I was told, then you're told that there's another 32nd degrees into the Illuminati, and that Lucifer is God, and that this is... So I don't
Well,
know.
see, they kind of twist that a little bit. Yeah, you spit on the cross, but it's presented like this, okay? Jesus is no longer on the cross. The cross killed Jesus. What do you feel about that? Oh, I don't like the cross. Then spit on the cross, and you spit on the cross. So some of that's a little misconstrued.
Right.
And there was a fellow that, it was George Humphrey out there, was mentioning about Albert Pike and his morals and dogma. Albert Pike, I believe, had a lot to do with codifying some of these rituals from one to the next. Now, we do know that Albert Pike and Forrester knew each other. Albert Pike was down in Charleston, South Carolina, And that is where the southern jurisdiction of the Grand Lodge of Freemasonry is located. There's in Charleston, South Carolina. And Forrester, who actually began the Ku Klux Klan. I say, don't you like their little books? You see the little cute little Klansman right here poking his head out there? Ain't that cute? See? You see that? He's just peekaboo. And then you got, and I've got, I've got pictures. I've got some friends that were in the Klan. Okay, and they were high up, and I treasured them, and they figured out, the black people never did anything to the white people. They figured it out on their own. The black people, as a group, never crushed or conquered the white people. So they figured, why they couldn't figure out why they were supposed to go after all these blacks, and they said, well, hey, why don't we go see these black guys and talk to them, and maybe there's some people there. Maybe there's somebody we can be friends with. And that's what my group did. And when I had a group of guys together and I showed them this, and I had explained to them, hey, watch yourself, because what will happen is they'll entrap you and this and that. Well, after I gave that little scenario, two of them came after me and goes, that's what happened to me. That's exactly what happened.
In the Klan.
At different times.
In the
No,
Klan.
not in the Klan, but they were just in the group, okay? There were only one of them that was in the Klan that gave me this later.
Yeah.
But there were two guys in the little group that came over to my place that came up to me. Hey, that's what they did. But they were at different times. One guy told me that night, and the other guy told me a couple of nights later. That's exactly what happened to me, man. And I have no life. He said, I don't have control over my life. My life is controlled by somebody else. He goes, I love my wife. I just would be devastated if she ever found out I ran around on her. And I said, hey, man, don't do it again. But let me just go through this. This is an old copy of an old Cloran. I mean, that's what they call their book, the Cloran. I can put it like this
That's
if you want to catch it, Joe.
Very close to the other one.
Okay.
Good.
And then you got,
Do you have
hold
any
it.
date of the actual beginning date of the Klan?
I tell you what, you got a shot of that?
19th century, I mean, right after the war.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, let's do. Let's look in our Encyclopedia of Freemasonry and see if it's in there. Let's look up Ku Klux Klan.
But they all come from, like you say, they're all the same thing.
It's all the same
and it goes
thing.
way back in
And
history,
that's
even
why,
before America.
that's
Way
why
back.
that block Hebrew script on that Grand Lodge from England is very important.
And all they do is change the name and start a new one, like the Mormon Church when it started,
See if Nathan Bedford Forrest was a Mason.
Yeah, Nathan Bedford Forrest.
That's who founded it.
That's it.
What's,
Boy, there's so many Knights of the Golden Fleece, Knights of this and that.
what's that block Hebrew script say? What's the interpretation?
I don't know. I'd have to get out the book and look at it.
Probably one world order.
Do you know what
Nathan
it says,
Bedford.
Paul? What-
I noticed like eternal peace or something like that, one word I haven't looked at it.
Yeah, after they compromise
Yes.
the eternal.
I don't see Nathan.
Yeah, your
I don't see Nathan Bedford. I think it's in here as
Take
Knights of
your
the Ku
journal
Klux
peace.
Klan.
Knights of the
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I went through the whole Masonic thing, and,
Oh, you're a Mason?
oh yeah,
Ah, you have a Mason there.
but I never got invited to the back room or anything.
Oh.
But
Are you
I've heard
serious?
story, I don't know.
You've heard the stories.
Have you heard stories of it?
But
About
I don't
Lucifer.
have any kind of reference, I mean, the people that I knew that were 30-30.
Well, you know that guy that wrote
Hold on,
that
let
expose
him finish. Hold on.
He was murdered.
Hold on. Finish for us. Did you finish your thing?
Well, I was 32nd, but anybody that I knew that was 33 was pretty reputable. I couldn't imagine that they'd ever.
They'll, even if you've got a tarnished career, they'll make you reputable.
Yes. Are you still a Mason? How'd you get out? I heard you couldn't get out of these things
Well,
either.
I was raised a Mormon too.
Your best thing to do is to just not
Well,
go.
most Mormons have no clue about this stuff.
It'll have Knights of the Ku Klux Klan that I can find. There's another. It might be under Invisible Empire. Sometimes you have to look for it a little bit. But the encyclopedias from the early 1900s or late 1800s will tell you pretty accurately.
It was
The
during
Klansmen themselves say that the Klan was invented by or created by Nathan Bedford Forrest. That's what they'll say, because all the guys that are still doing it are still down in Georgia and Alabama, Mississippi, whatever. Yes, sir.
Do you know why they came into existence?
The Klan?
Yes.
Well, yeah, as an alternative to Freemasonry. Now, what happened was, I've got a graph in one of my books here,
It was more than that, wasn't it?
where I think it was in the early 20s. I think I showed that to you one time, where they had a graph, and the Klan had 6 million participants, and then the Masons only had like 2, and the Oddfellows only had like 3. And then, in a 2 years period of time, the Klan dropped to like 1.2 million, and the Freemasons
Yeah.
and the Oddfellows went up
So
that
it's all the
same
same
year
thing.
in the same proportions. So it's like the one stepped into the other, I guess just to have some, maybe some guys do it just to get out of the house. I don't know. I've never had a fascination with it. I just like reading the books and get, say, wow, man, this sure is some funky little writing here. Yes, ma'am.
But I heard it was kind of like the mafia. That once you get in these things, you don't get out without being
The only way you can get out, the only way you can get out is move and just not go anymore.
They'll kick you out.
So if you're low enough level, apparently, you can just fade away.
Yes, sir.
Well, basically, have you ever seen a movie called Birth of a Nation?
Yes, where it has all the Klansmen in it?
Yeah.
Yes.
And so after the war, a couple of the states were given over to the blacks to control completely politically. And because of their having political control, the blacks, and all these people that were white plantation owners and one thing or the other, lost all their voting rights and one thing and the other, the Klan came into existence to recapture their political strength that they had at one point in time.
Okay. Yeah, that's right. Go ahead and change.
40.
Hey everybody, my name is Paul Schifranke. I was here 5 years ago speaking, and I'm happy to be here again. Thank you very much. Very interested, though I didn't hear what Harry presentation before, I kind of knew the gist of it, that it was going to be about the Masons and all these other people. This, what I'm about to tell you, fits in very well with his presentation, because it applies to another group of people that kind of follow that kind of stuff.
Can you talk a little bit?
Yeah, we can't
Yeah, I
hear you.
will.
A little louder.
Okay. I'd like to go back to 1980, when I was 14 years old. I lived in Maine, and my parents decided to go to Austria for 2 years. That's where my mother's from. Well, the primary problem was, where am I going to school? Because it's a very different school system, and I had to kind of fit in there. My German was fluent, but yet my grammatical writing was not that good. So I had to be accepted in some school. So I made different phone calls and inquiries in some schools in Austria that were just secular schools. And they told them about me and everything, and most of the schools were like, boy, he's not going to be able to fit in because our curriculum is tough. But the thing is with Austrians is they're kind of a strange people. They're better than everybody else. They're better than the Germans even, and the Germans tend to be kind of arrogant. But the Austrians are, nobody tells us what to do, we do what we want. And they said, oh, he's American, he's not going to be able to fit in. So it went through about 3, 4, 5 schools, and it was going to be tough to get in. Well, then they called the Abbey of Lambach, the Benedictine Abbey of Lambach, because they advertised that they had a school there. And they very happily taken foreign students. And basically they didn't care how good or how bad your German was. We will accept you one way or the other. So we inquired about that school. It looked good. It had a very good curriculum. And plus the Benedictine Abbey had boarding for boys. So it was an ideal situation. I would spend there 5 days and go home on weekends, and everything will be fine. So we moved over there, and my parents decided, yes, this is the school to go to. It is a very famous abbey in Austria, the Abbey of Lambach it's called. Now, I don't know how many people have read any before that, but you can tell me later if you know. Does anybody have an idea who went to the Abbey of Lambach, a famous historical figure?
Sound music?
If you know, no. I'll tell you later on if you don't know
Can you
it.
spell it?
The Abbey of Lambach, Lambach, a very famous historical figure, recent history, went to school there. Well, it is a abbey of the Benedictine order. The school adjacent to it was a secular school taught by secular professors, but they were all connected in one big building. It's a huge abbey.
Was it Hitler?
How did you know?
I just read him studying it.
Yes. Yes, he went there. But what I'm about to tell you is from a point of view that I was 14. I was there for 2 years. I just followed the rules. I just went about business. I didn't inquire, I didn't know anything. But now, in my later life, reading some books, I kind of look back and say, wow.
Well,
Okay, all of us were there. My first day, it was a very peculiar thing. We met the head abbot, we went into Mass. Because the first thing we had to do is go to the cathedral, into the Mass, where the abbot would give us a speech. Now the funny thing is, there was about 80 of us students, boys, that stayed there. We were lined up in a certain way. And we were told to stand outside in front of the church door. And then they gave us the signal. We walked into the church, and as a typical Catholic church, you have the big alleyway in the middle to the altar, and on both sides you have benches, and down on the edge you have the Stations of the Cross. Well, 40 of us had to walk to the left, to the right. The other 40 had to walk to the left. And we had to walk all the way down to the front, pay homage to the altar, go back, and then start filling in the rows. Which is strange because I was a Catholic, and I went to church in Spain and America, and all you did is you just walked in, holy water, and sit down. But we had to go in a certain way. Front, and fill up the seats. Okay, I'm just going to do what I'm told. I'm not going to get in trouble on my first day. And the funny thing is we met the first 3 priests. And our chief one that will be in charge of the dormitory was called Pater Augustine. Short guy, about 5 foot tall, kind of balding, with this real nasty stare. Looked at us. Very muscular, tough looking. And he always used to, it was like boot camp. Silence! Stand! You may go. Okay. Fine, went to the Mass. The abbot gave a speech, welcome everybody. Everything was fine. And of course, when we exited, we had to exit exactly the same way, out to the courtyard. And as you walked out in the courtyard, there's this nice little shrine there with the Virgin Mary, and water, and on top you see kind of a bent swastika. Supposedly that dated from the 1200s. That was the monastery of Lama. Dated from the 1200s, but there was a swastika there. And later on, as I found out, Hitler went to school there too. And that symbol was there, so I kind of put 2 and 2 together. Well, maybe he got it from that. Maybe he didn't, I don't know. And they told us that that was the ancient symbol for the sun. Well, we all got into our rooms, dormitories, everything. And it was like supper time at 5 o'clock. Be there. Well, we were a little bit slow. We just wanted to find our way around. So on that first day, there was a group of older students. They came by, 6 of them. Came by the rooms. They were wearing a black band on their shirts with a red cross. And they came by and said downstairs to eat immediately. So these were the seniors or wherever they were. We do as we're told. Okay? We had to stand in line to the chow hall. Of course, we had to go in a certain way again. Now you may go in. All of us walked into the chow hall. There's a row, there's the priest's table sitting in the front, and there's 2 rows of tables in a center alley, pretty much like the church. But 40 of us had to walk against the wall, go around, and sit down. We had to stand. The priest would say the prayer. All of us had to repeat it. And then it was time, you may eat now. So we ate. And it was kind of like strange because I grew up in the United States and, you know, I didn't have, this sounded like I was going to Marine Corps boot camp.
Yeah.
And this was supposed to be a Catholic school of some type. I knew they were going to be strict, there's going to be rules and regulations, but you had to follow all this ritualistic type of stuff. But I just followed the rules and didn't think much of it. Well, supper time was over, and this was the first day. And then we went to bed, and then the following day was the first day of class. Everything went fine. We got to meet our professors. Of course, over in Europe, the classes are regimented too, but that's just a standard thing. It's nothing unusual about that. I mean, when the professor walked in, everybody stood up and then sat down when they were told to be seated, but that's a sign of respect. Well, on that second day, we went back to the Abbey dormitory, and it was time to get our school books. Apparently, the book, we had to get these little coupons, and these were the books we would need for class because you get to keep them. And there was a special big hallway. And in the center there was a guy sitting there with stacks of books. And you would walk up and give him the coupon and get your books and go back. Strange thing was, we had to go into that big hall a certain way. And you went around like 3 times. 3 times until you get to the guy who gave you the books. And it was kind of strange because it's like, well, why in the world don't they just put a long table on the side of the wall and everybody just walks up and grabs their books and it's a lot faster? No, we had to do it that specific way. I didn't think much of it. That's how they want to do it. That's how they want to do it. Just follow the rules. Well, later on I learned what happens when you don't follow the rules. Well, the first experience, it was 1 week into that. Went to class. Of course, everything was regimented. 5:30 in the morning, the priest would come knock on the door real loud. Boom, boom, boom. Up, 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 up. You have 5 minutes to go down there, wash up into the shower room and everything. Then we went to breakfast. Of course, everything was, you had to walk the same way, seating and everything. Wonderful. Then you went to class. Then when you came back, there was lunchtime. And then there was like a 3-hour study hall where everybody had to study and do their homework. I mean, every day was just very much regimented. And then once a week, we had, on Wednesday, we had to go to Mass, to the chapel. That I will get to later. So, where was I at? So we got into that. And okay, the penalties. The first Friday, okay, I was supposed to go home Saturday morning. I was there like for 4 days. On the 5th day came our initiation of new students. Most of them were Austrian and German. I was the only American in there. We had one from Kuwait and one kid from Thailand, a Muslim and a Buddhist in a Catholic school. I couldn't figure that out, but
All doing the same.
I don't know. Well, Friday night we were all standing, doing our thing, playing ping pong and pool. And all of a sudden come these older students with the band and the Red Cross. About 15 of them come up, and they started grabbing one student, boosh, beating him up. They took a heavy set kid, lined him up on a pool table, put some cologne, and started slamming him. And the priest was right there watching. Pang, boom. Funny thing is, they grabbed me and did very little damage. The Arab, hardly any damage. The Thai, hardly any damage. A couple of us. The foreigners were not touched. But the Austrians and the Germans got severe beatings. And this was like, this goes on every year. This is initiation. And then the priest said, this is to show you all that if you break the rules, this will be 10 times more severe. One kid had to go to the hospital that weekend. But apparently, it doesn't seem like there was any law or anything that stopped them from using corporal punishment. Wonderful. I went home and told that story to my parents, and it's like, oh, it's, just see how it goes.
Don't break the rules.
They said this is only a one-time event. We're going to get hit and everything, but we'll see how things go. Well, I kept on going on to school there, and everything went fine. I had to do my homework and everything, but, the ritual, all that. Didn't get into any big trouble. But we had a couple students there. Let me tell you about told you I had just one guy from Thailand, one from Kuwait. And we didn't really associate that much with them. I spoke German fluently, so I hung out with the Austrians. But there was a really, the students that were there were pretty intelligent. There was two of them that I roomed with that were brilliant musicians. I mean, very talented. There was others that were into mathematics and engineering, older ones that I got to know. And then there were some that were dumb, like the real dumb ones that were there. Funny thing is, their parents were multimillionaires. There was like 3 guys that were troublemakers and just stupid, but every one of them had multimillionaire parents. And whenever the student got in trouble, somehow there would be a new pool table in a room, or something new, reconstruction or something, and the student could stay there because he was threatened to be thrown out. Well, Daddy wrote a check and took care of things. Well, everything went fine the first month. I did my homework. I passed everything. The school itself was a whole different story because it's actually the educational system was excellent. But after a while, I started getting good grades. And after I started getting good grades, a priest, the head priest, was approaching me and said, "You're getting very good grades." And I was kind of amazed as how does this guy know my grades? This is a separate thing to school, and I get my report card. But the priest always seemed to know of all the students exactly how well they did on a test. One time I did poorly on a test, and I didn't even know it. I kind of knew I did poorly, but I didn't get the exam back. And the priest pulled me on the side and said, "You did poorly on that test and all this. You got to, straighten up and all this." I said, "How in the world?" And then the next day I got the exam and got the grade. So he already knew ahead of time what I had. And it was kind of strange. Well, they approached me one day and told us, "Well, you're getting very good grades. You're very good in math and science and Latin. We like that." Okay, I wasn't studying theology or anything. I thought, well, if I was, into religious subjects or something, I would expect them to be a little more interested. But they were specifically interested that I was good in chemistry, math, and physics, and they pointed that out. I said, "Well, we have a program for advanced students. It is like a fraternity called the Flavia, which is a Latin word." And he said, "And if you join that, we have a meeting twice a week, and you go to that meeting and we enhance your learning ability. We enhance your learning, and you learn a lot more." Of course, I really wasn't interested in anything like that. My goal at that time was a way to infiltrate the chapel, get the keys to the little sanctum, and get the church wine and a wafer. That's all I cared about. So I said, "Well, church wine. That's all I cared about." I said, "Well, I really have a trouble with the German language. I need to study a little bit more. I don't have the time, but I would be interested in being an altar boy in your Wednesday church services. Let's start there." And then, okay. So I was an altar boy for a few months. But what that gave me, it gave me the key. So I was able to get in there and drink all the church wine I wanted. And it was really good. It was kind of strange. I did get a real good buzz off of that church wine. Unlike any other one. I don't know what was in it, but it was just delicious. But so I just did that, but I stayed out of it. Well, this was the first year. The second year is where it really got interesting because the classes got more advanced. I took an advanced physics class. And where we here apparently was a priest that was teaching advanced physics. He asked me, "Are you a member of the Flavia?" I said, "No, I'm not." He said, "Well, you should be." I said, "I'll consider it. Depends what I have to do." I said, "I'm considering, getting into the Flavia." He said, "Well, I hope you do. You're very gifted in this subject."
What's the flag?
That was this little fraternity they had on the side, this little group they joined. Well, I found it kind of strange that this priest, he had a physics class. The guy had a laboratory about the size of this room with some very, very advanced equipment in there. And one time he got a package from the United States. And he said, my English is bad. It's not that good. Can you help me set up this experiment? Sure. I'll set this experiment up for you. It was called the Millikan experiment to figure out the mass of an electron. But the funny thing is he had radioactive material in that package.
Mm-hmm.
He had these little lead canisters that you open up, and he said, don't open and touch that. That is radioactive. So now I'm thinking, how in the world does a guy get, oh, I can just go to any company in the United States that sells radioactive material and says, I would like you to just send me a package, and they'll say, sure, no problem. I don't know. But he got it, and he had a lot of stuff in that laboratory. And he had radioactive stuff in there. So I helped him set up this thing, and everything was kind of strange. Another thing is he decided to take a vacation to Egypt. And when he left for Egypt, it just happened that Anwar Sadat got assassinated.
Who got assassinated?
Anwar Sadat.
Oh, well, oh, yeah.
At the same time that he was vacationing, visiting the pyramids, the same guy.
And this is the priest.
Yes, my physics professor, who was a priest. Didn't think anything of it, and we asked him, oh, he's the total chaos down there and everything, but he went to Rome first. He flew from Cairo to Rome and then back to...
Orders from the papacy.
Of course.
I didn't know. Hey, I don't know these things.
Was he a Jesuit?
I don't know. No, he was a Benedictine.
Same thing, doesn't matter.
Funny thing is, now that I'm thinking back, you walk into any Benedictine monastery, and there's a lot of them there. When you walk into the Benedictine monastery on the archway, this is what you see. This is the logo of the Benedictines. Ora et labora. Pray and work. That's what you see outside. Now, some friends of mine and myself decided, well, this is an old monastery, abbey from the 1200s. Let's see if we can explore it a little bit. Because I was always interested in history and archaeology, and there was always these little rooms in the back. We always wondered, well, what's behind the chapel? What's behind the cathedral? What's under the cellar there?
Mm-hmm.
Let's do a little bit of exploring, and we did.
Mm-hmm.
Good thing we didn't get caught, because we had to walk around. Well, first of all was the room where the members of the Flavia met. And it was kind of strange. We walked through it. Of course, there was nobody there at the time, but we found, because we always heard them like twice a week, speaking and chanting something when the Flavia met. And we found that room. It's kind of funny. You walked into this big hall. It was like a throne. A big throne with two little thrones on the side and a bunch of chairs on the edge. Didn't think anything of it, but it kind of looks familiar to a lot of things we see today. And on top was a big carving of a dragon. And I don't know what that means.
Reptilian.
I don't know what it means, but there was a dragon, like the mythological dragon, but it was carved out of stone. It was part of the monastery, and it was on top of the throne. I still don't know what it is. But inside that room, under the dragon, was a big word. 3 words. This is what you see when you go in the archway. When you went into that room where the Flavia met, above the throne and under the dragon, this is what you saw. This is where I first seen this. Ordo Abkau.
Chaos.
That is the first time I've ever seen that, was in that room. Of course, I've read books later, and it's everywhere, but that's where I first seen that. Above, order from chaos. Above the throne, under the dragon. That's what there was.
And what did that mean to them?
To them? From chaos, you establish order. So we said, this is kind of interesting, but to me at that time it was just exploration, nothing else. I didn't know what a Freemason was. I didn't know what a conspiracy theory was. I mean, it was just something, okay, this is what they do. And we decided, well, what else do they do? Well, the funny thing was, in first year in 1980, when we got called into the office of the priest who was in charge of the dormitory, funny thing was, the guy had 3 VCRs in his room. Now, this is 1980. They were pretty expensive back then, now that you think about it. And they're all VCRs, video recorders. He had 3 in his room, and then there was another main room where we were allowed to watch television, and he had movies that we put in. So actually had 4 on that floor. I understand the one in a room, that was for us probably, and then but the 3 of them in his room, and he had a bunch of tapes, and he had a little safe where he kept some stuff too.
Safe.
Well, we got friendly with a member of the Flavia who was a young guy. He was about 20 years old. He went to school there, he joined the Flavia, and he was ready to become a priest. His name was Peter. And he was also studying physics in college. Now, this is where it gets peculiar. The guy was studying physics in college. But he was going for getting his collar within a year or 2. He was going to become a fully ordained priest, Benedictine priest. Well, we were talking to him, and it was, why do you want to do this? Why don't you just want to go out into the world and, you know, work for a company or something? Why do you want to get stuck and glued in a monastery and pray all your life? And he was like, we don't have to pray all our lives. This is, we have things to accomplish. We're going to travel around the world, and we're going to be serving the Pope. Okay? But the funny thing is, most of the priests, except Anselm, who went to Egypt, I'd never seen anyone else travel. They were always there. Well, then there was another priest, whose name was Father Joseph. I hardly ever saw the guy. But he was always in a monastery, locked up. There was not a day he went out. Well, one day, Father Joseph decided to take a drive, and he got killed in a car accident. Now, it's strange. Somebody that never leaves the monastery for a year or 2 just happens to decide to take a drive on the road, and he gets killed by a car accident. Well, it was a very sad event. You know, they had the funeral. We were there. It was terrible. We lost one of our people. But the funny thing is, I did some research, and like 5 years before that, and another 3 years before that, 2 other priests decided to take a drive and got killed by auto accidents. So there were 3 right there that left and got killed by car accidents. You know, it was just a sad thing. Didn't think of anything at that time, but now that I think back, it was kind of peculiar. Well, going back, friend Peter, getting a degree in physics and becoming a priest. Well, just like my mentor, Anselm, with the laboratory, he had a degree in chemistry, physics, and engineering, but yet he's a priest in the monastery. Well, funny thing is, we kind of followed Peter one time. We were spies at night. We were supposed to stay in our dorm rooms and sleep. But what we did is we did the good old trick. In case there was a bed check, you know, we kind of hid something under the blankets to look like we were there, and we decided to take a look because there was some activity going on and we wanted to know what. Well, we went down into one of the hallways behind the chapel. We got a good view of the rooms where all the priests were staying. Lo and behold, from one of the back courtyards come a bunch of hookers.
Oh my
And they were like, oh my God. And we observed that for weeks. We observed that for weeks. And funny thing is, our friend, young Peter, was one of them who got a hooker. And there were other young priests who got hookers. They just brought him in, and there they were. Well, I kind of figured out later on one time, we wanted to sneak out. So what we did is we put glue into the lock at the priest's door so he couldn't get out. And we snuck out for a couple hours. And the funny thing was that we went back out through that hallway where they were sleeping and where the hookers were coming in. That was our way out because nobody was guarding that gate. And that's how we got in. Well, funny thing was, we did see a video camcorder that was just put up on a shelf, just laying there. It was kind of, and then now I'm thinking back and I'm tying it in with the VCRs in the room.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What they must have been doing is they must have been taping the priests with the hookers and then keeping it in that room. So they had some blackmail material there, but this is where we went out. So for like a whole year, that was our secret hiding place, that we could go out at night and go to the bars and inns and come back in. It was the only unguarded place, so it was a benefit for us. Well, what they did is, then I kind of knew what was going on, that it was not something I would want to get into. I didn't realize it was blackmail or anything like it. Now thinking back, I know exactly what it was, all this ritualistic stuff. So, what happened, I got to see the punishment that somebody received. One of the members of the Flavia. I don't remember what they did, but one night, 3 of the guys were standing in line in front of the priest. And he was just screaming at them. And we just kind of opened the door and looked, and we saw them down the hallway lined up. And this little guy, Father Augustine, walked up to one of them and whoo, knocked him on the ground. Walked up to the second one, pow, knocked him on the ground. Guy had his nose blazing. Then there was a third one that was almost a 6'5" tall guy, about 18 years old. And he grabbed Father Augustine's hand, like, "You're not going to hit me, Father." And Father Augustine grabbed him with a judo flip and knocked him right down. And he said, "Don't you ever touch my hand again," real loud. I mean, he did a real special move. I was like, wow, this guy's combat trained or something. I said, you don't want to mess with this little guy. And this was a priest. And he was disciplining these 3 guys who were members of the Flavia that were ready to be ordained in the priesthood. And we could see it was just brutality. And I'm like, I don't think I ever want to join that group. Because first of all, I've been stealing all the church wine. And I did not want to get caught, so I'm just going to play it low key and just obey the rules and just continue to school and not join that group. Well, another thing I found funny at that time was nuns. Well, first of all, this was an abbey that was all priests. But in my ideal thinking, you know, as a kid watching the good old humble priest in Ireland, cooking his own meal and everything, doing everything themselves, cleaning and cooking and all that. This is what I thought monks did. They kind of lived isolated, did everything for themselves and their brothers and took care of it. Not the case in that place. Those guys did absolutely nothing.
Nuns were slaves.
There was a monastery about a mile away where the nuns stayed. I think they were called the Carmelite nuns. Well, these little girls, nuns, would come in every day and cook the dinner for us. They'd go cook everything, cook stuff for the priest. And what they did is with the young girls that were ready to go and become nuns, their initiates, they did all the dirty work, like scrub the floors, clean the toilets, carry the heavy stuff. And one time a friend and I felt sorry for one of those girls. Oh, we'll carry that in for you into the kitchen, just trying to be nice. And oh my God, Father Augustine grabbed us by the collar and said, don't you ever touch or don't you ever look at these girls again, or else you're really going to get punished. You're not going to eat today. He said, don't you ever talk to them, don't you ever look at them, nothing. I'm like, excuse me, we just try to be Christian and nice. And they treated them like dirt. They would scream at them in the kitchen if something was not done on time. I mean, it was just absolutely the way they talked to them. We were not even allowed as students to look at them or talk to those nuns or their initiates. And they were doing everything. I mean, it was just like slave drivers, which I didn't understand at that time. I said, what in the world is going on? They were just absolutely horrible. And the funny thing is with the priest, when we would eat, we'd have to eat the potato soup, the black bread. That was a common meal we had at that time. And the priest would have a small bowl of soup.
A what?
A small bowl of
Oh,
soup.
okay.
And that's all he would eat.
He's right.
And I'm like, my God, this guy doesn't eat much at all. He must be trying to be, you know, well, guess what? After he got done with that small bowl of soup, they brought him a nice big meal up to his room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and they brought in the hookers for all those guys. I guess they videotaped everything. And it was just a real strange experience.
I'm surprised
Now-
you did steal a videotape.
I couldn't. They were locked. He had all the video. The ones he had out that you could get, they were still locked behind key, were like recordings of biblical movies that we were allowed to watch once in a while. But then there was another area where he had tapes that were completely locked.
With the several videotape things, he was probably copying tapes.
That's exactly what he was doing,
Yeah.
making copies in case one. Now thinking back, that's probably what he did. But they were trying to induce me. Well, comes to be what's so interesting about Father Anselm, Pater Anselm, who went to Egypt when Sadat got killed. Well, let me tell you a little bit about his laboratory. This guy had a laboratory the size of this room. He had radioactive materials there. He had flasks. He must have had hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of equipment in there. And he had some very lethal chemicals and all that. And this was just his playroom, his hobby room. And I translated several experiments for him because he kept on getting equipment from the United States, from a place in California.
To Austria.
To Austria, radioactive material. What was he doing? I can't just imagine he was doing just a small experiment or anything. But, well, lo and behold, it's been like 20 years since I've been there. And what I did is I'm telling the story because the Bear Boys introduced me to a book called Vatican Assassins. And I started reading that, and I was like, wow, that's what I saw. That's what I went through. So I don't know what they were doing or training, which I'm still trying to figure out. One thing is you have all these priests there that are all into engineering, physics, chemistry, and they all seem to be combat trained. Now the way I found out what the combat training was, the incident with the 3 members of the Flavia that were beat up by the priest. Well, a few weeks later, they had a show in the Abbey for us students to watch as a demonstration of judo. And here comes the lead judo instructor of Lambach, who was a 65-year-old guy who was a colonel in the SS, who trained SS troops. And he had his students there demonstrating, doing judo tricks. And guess what? Father Augustine went like that with him too, and they flipped each other and all that. And right there I found out that is their instructor. We asked Peter later, did you take any martial arts classes? He says, oh yeah, with that guy, we went to that school and that's where we take martial arts classes. I guess you really need that as a Catholic priest.
Yeah, really.
It was really strange. Oh. But the whole thing that bothered me later on was the physics laboratory. Well, I looked recently on websites of the school. I don't know if the dormitory still exists, but the size of the school next to the Abbey has quadrupled. It is taking foreign students in like crazy. I mean, it's a huge school. They got a tremendous curriculum. Well, just the other day, I looked on the website. I wanted to have a picture of the monastery, you know, just to show you, because it's kind of a last-minute thing that I wanted to talk about. And I pulled up a website of Lambach, and lo and behold, where's my thing here? Oh, yeah, there you go. Now, I was really shocked when I pulled this up because the priest in the upper left-hand corner.
Can I get you to move the thing over a little bit? You're gonna stand in the middle and then I
Okay.
got part of the thing. The other way, like you had. There you go. That's good there.
Okay, this is Father Prior Anselm, the man who went to Egypt when Sadat got killed. This is a thing from 98, July 19th, 98. This is celebrating his 40th anniversary at the Abbey. And it tells you a little bit about him, where he come from, and he has recruited 20 priests, and he's been there forever. And right below him is a recruit. And very interesting. This guy just got ordained as a collar, with his black collar. He became a priest, born in 1975. Tell him a little bit about his family. He has a degree in electrical engineering. So here we have his new recruit that got ordained, has a degree in electrical engineering. Now every priest that I knew there had some type of degree in physics and the sciences. Now it's kind of strange that a monastery would need a whole bunch of priests with degrees in engineering and the sciences. I'm still trying to figure that out. But when they travel, one time when they leave, a lot of them, by car, they seem to get in an accident. So this is what I showed. This bottom here is one of the chapels I used to go to. Okay, here's another picture.
No, we can't read it.
We can't.
Okay, this is a side view of the entryway into the monastery of Lambach. Right above on the arch there, you have the Ora et Labora when you come in, and it takes you right into the courtyard. See, the thing is built very ceremonially somehow. You have the big courtyard with the arches and everything. Then in the back, you have the cathedral. And the funny thing is, when you look into the Mass, the doorway is facing west. So the front where the altar is of the cathedral is east. So everything is oriented exactly like in these Masonic lodges. So this is what I went through, what they're trying to. What I'm wondering is, what if I did decide to join the Flavia and got into their program and did everything they did, and my parents decided, hey, we're moving back to the United States? What would happen? You can turn the light back on.
You would have had a car accident.
Yeah.
Would I have died of a disease and say, we're sorry, Paul died? I don't know.
How many years did you go to school there?
I went there for 2 years.
Okay, and how'd you get out of this mess? Just move?
I'll tell you.
Okay.
Because the ones with the car accident, maybe the ones that decided they didn't want to do the
Okay.
assassins or
Yeah,
whatever.
sure.
Well, it was the second year when I got into this a little bit, and Father Amza wanted me to translate his experiments for me. I said, fine. When are you going to join the Flavia? When are you going to join the Flavia? It's time for you to join. You're brilliant. I don't want to join. Well, you should consider it. What a strange thing is I started taking exams. That was going towards the second half of the second year. I started taking exams and getting worse grades than I should be getting. My English compositions, I was getting like C's. Excuse me, I know how to write English. I was getting bad grades in my English. My German, I was getting bad grades. They couldn't quite get me on a math, but they found like little ways to try to trick me. That was the only thing that really pissed my math teacher off, is that when in school, you got called up to the front and you had an oral examination. And it was kind of strange that I was me and two of my other friends that I was real friendly with, who they were not interested in joining, but they were the two musicians that were brilliant. We kept on getting called up to the front of the class for some reason. And a couple times we weren't that prepared because, it's everybody's turn. And then one time I got called up in the same class, math class, 3 times in 1 week. I got called up on Monday for an oral examination. I got lucky on Tuesday, I didn't get picked. Wednesday and Thursday I got picked for one time. But the questions were so tough, like a chapter ahead in the book, but I just happened to be good and know that, and it aggravated them. And in history, they pulled the same thing in history. They couldn't get me in history. But they got me in the art class. The art class, we had it twice a week, and I got called up all the time. I wasn't that interested. I didn't have time to study. So that was one class I started doing poorly. And in my English composition, I started getting like a C instead of an A. Excuse me, what's wrong with this? Well, you didn't express yourself correctly here, you didn't, which was absolutely ridiculous. We started getting persecuted with our schoolwork. Well, it got to the end. Luckily, my parents said, well, we're moving back to the United States. It had nothing to do with the school, but it was just like, they got tired of it over there. We're moving back to the United States. And I was like, well, kind of happy. Because it's like the last 2 months of the second year, I started, with other students, started getting persecuted. Well, I moved on to the United States. I kept in contact by mail with the other two guys. What they went through in the third year was absolutely ridiculous. The first 2 months of the semester, they kept on getting picked on constantly in class, continuously. By the end of the first semester, they were both out. They were expelled.
Is that the Chin and the Kuwaiti?
No.
Because they
The Chin and the Kuwaiti went on, whatever they do. We never even associated with those guys. They always kept to themselves. So it was not an issue. But my two friends from Austria, the first half of the third year there, they were finally expelled.
Because they wouldn't join the Flavias.
That's all I could think about, and that's what they said. They always got picked on in class. They always got in trouble at the Abbey and everything. They were expelled.
They were lucky.
Alice,
Yeah.
I need you.
Well, were they the ones that went out the back way with you?
Snuck around with you?
Yes. There was 3 of us, exactly.
I'm curious, what were your folks doing? What was your dad doing? What kind of job did he have? Whatever the-
Retired military.
Oh,
He was
military.
living off a military pension, and he just my mother was Austrian, and he liked it over there and just felt like it's a good place to hang out for a couple of years. That's all it was.
So it wasn't like he had a career job?
No. That's why we decided to move back, and they said, well, I had 2 years of Austrian schooling, which is good, and it helped me a great deal, and when I went back to the United States, I didn't really have to do hardly any schoolwork.
Because we're dumbed down over here.
Exactly.
Calm down.
But that's the whole thing that happened. My friends, they got expelled in the first half of the third year. So it looked like I would have been on the same course. But it all came down to because we wouldn't join that little group. So and that's the strange thing. All these priests that are engineers and scientists, who knows?
So what was the percentage of these young guys that were members of the Flavia as opposed to just regular, ordinary students?
Okay, about 30% joined the Flavia. The Arab and the Thai were with them too, surprisingly. There was a large percentage as regular students whose parents were very wealthy and they paid the Abbey a lot of money. They just went through the school and graduated. But what they did is they selected, it seemed like what they did is they selected the best students and good foreign students, and they tried to entice them to join the priesthood. But they didn't push celibacy or anything that you would expect from a Catholic. They said you can do a lot of things that you want to do. As we saw with the hookers and the girls and all that, but I guess what they did is they put you on videotape, and if you screwed up or something, it would get sent to the Pope or something, who knows, and you would get excommunicated. Now thinking about all this, what do they do to those that fall out of line once they join? Well, we did see the hooker thing.
Let them take
We saw the hooker thing. Then also, there were parents that brought their small children in for counseling or for something like that. And these young priests that were initiated and becoming that had to work with small children for some reason. They had to work with them, in talking about religion or something. And I'm wondering if they filmed them as a blackmail thing. Because now what you're hearing here is all these priests that were accused of child molestation. What if they went out of line and were set up?
And why this time period? I mean, it's been going on forever, presumably. Why now?
why are people coming forward now?
I don't know, but I can guarantee you, the ones that actually do the child molesting never ever get caught. Those you'll never hear about in the news.
Was there molestation in the boys' school then?
I did not witness any at all. I did not witness any. They just had, you know, the young priests had to do like a sessions counseling with young children, but I think that was a blackmail deal now that I'm thinking about it. But as far as any other molestation, I did not encounter anything like that. It was very, the whole thing was,
Being enlightened.
the whole thing was a military camp. They were all like drill sergeants, and it's not something that I expected from a Catholic school.
Do you know very much about Father Malachi Martin?
I've heard about him, but I don't know his background or anything. No.
No.
He was on, but he got killed, didn't he?
He died, they died.
Go down the stairs.
Oh, yes, okay.
Now-
Suicide.
Yeah. I can
Yeah,
gulp
fill
of
the
water
rest
here and continue on.
Well, his health was failing too.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. He's suicide.
You know, Paul, there was an article in the paper this morning that said the Vatican made it clear that these pedophile priests and such were not going to be kicked out. They were
Now,
going to retain them.
Now, an interesting thing that I did recently is back then when I went to school, I told you just my experiences with the rituals and everything, and now I'm putting it together what was actually going on. Well, I had a conversation with a priest, one of the priests there, one time. We were talking about history, and I mentioned something about the fall of the Roman Empire, and he said, "Paul, the Roman Empire has never fallen."
Yeah.
That's right.
That's right.
He says, he says, Caesar is our Holy Father. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Caesar.
And the Nazis didn't lose World War II, they just moved to the United States.
Well, funny thing is, the Abbey of Lambach was an SS order castle. The SS, some leaders of the SS, they partied in there. After the Third Reich would have won the war, that place was, they had plans to turn that place into a major, major SS resort.
Oh,
What does SS stand for? Is that Homeland?
Schutzstaffel.
Is that Homeland Security or something?
Yes.
Secret Service as far as.
Right, it's security.
Homeland Security.
Well, of the Nazis.
Schutzstaffel,
Of the Nazis.
the security of the party security.
Do you know if Hitler died or not?
I don't know.
I don't know all the theories about.
I could, there's
Oh,
another,
look somewhere else?
there's another presentation we could do one day on that. We
Okay.
got some of it. But the strange thing is that he did go to school there. He got transferred to another school in Linz that was also owned by the Benedictines.
Okay, and Hitler, in studying this stuff about Hitler, Hitler's mother worked as a maid with one of the Rockefellers, or Rothschilds, I guess the Rothschilds.
Rothschilds.
Okay, and she became pregnant, so they moved her out and paid for the baby and all, and it was Hitler. So he's got Jewish in his
Yeah.
father's. His father was a Jew. Okay,
Right.
and in Austria, there where he went to school, they had this whole genealogy set up. They knew that Hitler's father was a Jew, and Hitler grew up knowing this, and he hated that part of him. That's why he hated the Jews. And when he came time for him to invade Europe and all this stuff, he went for Austria first, because that's where the records were on his lineage, and he
Yes.
wanted those destroyed.
Well, he went to get the spear of destiny more than
Right.
anything.
Well, he wanted to destroy his lineage records.
Well, I did some research recently on those abbeys. You know, the priest said the Pope is Caesar. Well, that's who we're dealing with.
That's right.
Pope John Paul II did a good job. He's a Caesar.
And the Masons claim that they organized all religions.
All abbeys in Austria, in Germany, you look at them where they're located. They are all located where the old Roman forts were. You have the big Roman cities nearby them, and then they had the castella and the fortifications. They're right on there. You go all the way up to the Rhine where the old Roman fortifications, when you see abbey after abbey after abbey, lined up all along there.
They probably have
Monte
underground
Cassino,
tunnels.
Italy, was a big, huge Roman
With
fortress.
underground tunnels connecting.
All of them that were started by the Emperor Constantine. It's very interesting. But whenever you see an old map or a Roman map that talks about, like, they had the Austrian city of Norea, And they said, oh, scholars and archaeologists, we don't know where Norea is. Well, we roughly know what area it's at. There's a huge monastery plank right in that area. That's got to be where it's at. See, they built the Catholic Church built all their monasteries and abbeys on sites of old Roman forts and castles. So the empire has always been here. It has never fallen, and it's still governing us.
That's right.
What do you think of the book of the Vatican assassination?
I like that.
Good. Truthful.
You read that?
Yeah, I read it.
Yes, it's pretty interesting.
So what about now? I mean, after all this, are you under any kind of threat? Are you hiding? Are they after you? What? I mean,
No, nobody's after me.
Okay, I hope this video doesn't do it.
Oh, no. Actually, what I plan on doing is I'd like to go back to Austria next year and go into that place because now I know what I'm looking for.
Yeah, right, they're gonna let you in.
Now I know, they'll let me in. No problem. Well, any more comments or questions? It was just,
What kind of work are you involved at this point in time?
well, I'm not in hiding.
No, I mean, are you a physicist, or what kind of work do you, are you a chemist for a corporation? Or what?
No, I've studied engineering out of it. What I do is I do books for a hotel, a friend of mine in Biloxi, Mississippi, and I'm a professional gambler and poker player.
So
That's how I make my money. But it gives me the time.
He's very, very good.
It gives me the time to research, travel,
Yes.
and do what I need to
Well,
do.
you know,
I come to these
it's not
conferences.
good to be
That's how
employed
he's
in these
paid for all
high-tech
this.
things
No.
because they got you. It's better to
Right,
be a
right.
low-key nothing.
I am. That's exactly.
Yeah.
But I have the freedom and liberty to
And
do what
freedom
I
and
need to
liberty,
do.
yeah.
It's worth a lot.
Exactly.
What is your favorite gambling game, or
What are you good at?
specialize in?
He's good at many of them.
I seek out certain slot machines and extract money from them.
Oh
And I
my
also play
God.
poker.
You can beat the slot machines? You know how to
We
go?
don't have
Wow.
time.
Right.
They let you in.
Timing.
Did you ever try the dowsing rod?
No, I haven't.
We thought about it the
I've
other
heard of
day.
people
That's
taking
fun.
those into the casinos to douse the slot machines,
Yeah.
some have been thrown.
But there's a lot of
Oh,
other
really?
there's a lot of other skilled players that have done that, but eventually they get thrown out.
Yeah.
But
That's
we have Keesler Air Force Base in that town, and I keep a nice short military haircut, and the casinos do not mess with military.
And you know, you can douse in your pocket and stuff, and they
Oh,
won't
yeah,
know
you
it.
can-
I'll try it sometime.
Yeah.
Yeah, do it. Get some data.
Put it in your pocket and do it.
Okay, next we want to, I'm going to push some stuff off the table here. If you want to stretch your legs, take me just a second to set up. We're going to show you an amazing artifact from, we're going to change the pace a little bit and show you an amazing artifact from the tomb in Illinois. And
Move with him for a
he's been,
second.
they want to come
You
on
guys
for
look
more
really
photos.
good with these books and
Okay.
stuff, yeah.
Yeah, get
Yeah, then we want
And
to,
look over here.
it won't take long, and I'm going to show you some of the stuff that,
Thanks.
that we actually had out at the table and certain things there. Okay, here.
They did get me one way. I happen to like wearing black. I think their mind control program did
I do
that.
have.
I'll be back.
And it's kind of close to the same. See the little code book?